I'm thrilled to welcome to the stage here at MCP Night 3 folks that have actually already been on the stage with WorkOS at previous events that we've done. So please, big round of applause to welcome Brendan Irvine-Broque from Cloudflare, Clairvaux from ChatPRD, and David Cramer from Sentry. So a lot has changed in the last 6 months that have made agents feel like real. I'm curious, like, what's changing for you? What have you seen in your work and your jobs that's made this really tangible in the last 6 months?
A lot of this stuff that was a problem 6 months ago is still a problem and wildly unsolved. I think more people are leaning in now. I'm gonna stick with leaning in, but it's still unsolved. We see a lot of people that were definitely very skeptical, especially like going into this year. Probably still skeptical, rightly so, mind you. But at least they're now sort of giving it a chance, and largely this is like engineering personas and whatnot. But I don't know. I'm not futurist at all, so a lot of the stuff looks very similar, even than 1 year ago at this event. You know, it's like, yeah, it's different, but it's not totally different. So I don't know. That's my skepticism.
All right, different, not totally different. Claire, what do you think?
I'll go with different. So I was at your event in October. What has happened since October? Opus 4.6 happened. Everybody was like, oh, it can really cook. This was like a step change, I think, model that we saw come out, and people saw it start to solve harder problems faster. OpenClaw happened. That happened. And so I think people started to feel what an agent could really look like. Now, like, my OpenClaw commits suicide literally every night. Like, I just have to go downstairs and like kick the Mac Mini to keep it up. But I still have 9 of them. And so I think we saw this like model step change out of Anthropic. We saw OpenClaw and all the various kind of agentic experiences happen. We saw a lot of infrastructure come out of the core model providers in terms of cloud agents. And then, you know, I think Codex is like a sleeper hit right now. And so the things that I see is there was this inflection point at the end of last year where there was just a new set of problems that could be solved, and that continues to accelerate. And then you see more and more people have the infrastructure to do really interesting agentic experiences, either for internal coding use cases or for product-facing things. And then you're starting to see sort of the infra around that come together, so you don't have to build so much of it yourself. And so I just think it continues to accelerate. And I was talking to somebody today, and they were saying it was like, should we, can we, can't, and now it is like, it's time to go. People are feeling a lot of apprehension about moving fast enough now, and then I think, of course, like it'll swing to the other side, and then they'll say, whoops, I spent too much. But I think a lot has changed in the last 6 months, both from a capabilities perspective and just from an interface perspective.
Yeah, I think what we're starting to see is if 6 months ago people were using agents themselves, there's a lot more people using agents in multiplayer modes and kind of using them in chat with other people, and that really accelerates people's ability to kind of learn from each other. I mean, we're seeing, you know, you guys at WorkOS do a lot of this, and that kind of has this like recursive effect of the people who were maybe skeptical 6 months ago getting on board because they're just seeing that happen every day.
Let's talk more about that. So a lot of people have their own personal home AI lab. You know, they might be tinkering on stuff, or they have their own OpenClaw. But what are you seeing at the companies you work at? And Claire, you're advising a bunch of executives right now. You're all working either as leaders or with leadership teams. What are you seeing evolve in terms of organizations?
So I posted about this. I've seen a lot of Claude these days, a lot of co-work, a lot of Claude code. And so what I am seeing is folks moving out of the chat interface into more local file-based agent systems, whether those are like the nice, pretty ones for business people or the like, I feel more like a hacker Claude code version. And so I am seeing people kind of centralize on the Claude stack. It's very interesting to me. And then I'm seeing from the engineering perspective, people starting to move beyond co-pilot mode and really feel out the infrastructure and figure it out on how to use background agents and multiplayer mode. Like, that's been the unlock. People are like, I want to 2x or 3x my PRs. I want to get a lot more throughput out of my engineering organization. I'm like, well, your humans are going to be a rate limiter. So in order to really multiply that, you're going to have to rely on background agents. And I'm actually seeing a lot of people skip the buy version of background agents. This is, I think, very interesting, and going straight into build, because again, all of a sudden we have this nice infrastructure that we can rely on, and then people know enough and the coding models are good enough that you can kind of roll your own.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have gone through the cycle of trying all the tools that are out there in the world, evaluating them, realizing that it's really hard to manage these when you have a big organization. Like, we're a pretty big company, Cloudflare, and trying to go all in on a shared set of infrastructure. We have a thing we call our engineering codex, for example, that is kind of the source of truth for how you get work done at the company, and we give that to every single agent. And that's really accelerated, again, like the shared learning when you have 100, 200, 300 different code bases. How do you even find things? There's kind of these basic questions that people are all trying to solve.
Yeah, so I actually, my take on some of this is everybody wants to see what's coming, so we kind of lean forward a little farther ahead than we are capable of. And say for the coding agents example, you see a lot of people DIYing their little coding background agent. I think WorkOS has one. The model does all the heavy lifting. It's actually like pretty easy to build, right? But I think the reason people do it is because none of the generalized solutions are actually working. And I also think then you quickly realize that maybe it can't work as well, but you can get past a little bit here and there with a more hyper-specific solution, because we've done similar where we built internal stuff. We have a bunch of like efforts in background agents or sort of these shared chatbots and knowledge bases, and you still hit all these same hurdles. Like if you go back to, I don't know when random terms got coined, like context engineering or whatever, but that's not a new idea. And all the fundamental challenges from that, we've not been able to work past still today. We might be able to do a little bit more, but I think you're seeing a lot of this, like, yeah, you can DIY, and if you could move farther than you can with, say, again, I'll take coding harnesses, Cursor or Devin, by doing your own thing, because it's not that hard to build software. Again, you're not doing, the model's doing the heavy lifting. It's probably worth it. At least for us, though, we've not been able to really get that far into it. Not for everything, obviously. Coding, I think, is a particularly challenging problem, but like the multiplayer stuff, like we did introduce a Slack bot, I don't know, some months ago, and it pretty quickly got mainstream adoption in the company. And I do think, actually, the multiplayer thing is probably key, because you see Cloud Cowork, and it's unbelievably useful, especially for people that are not sitting in a terminal. Except it's single. Like I can't share anything. It's all local. I basically don't use it because of that. Otherwise, it's great software, you know.
I want to ask about how the products you're building are changing. This agentic experience, this ability to have kind of like a long-running task manager that has reasoning. I mean, with Sentry in particular, you guys have Seer, which is your kind of intelligent engine that pulls out, stack traces and errors and reasons about it. And then you have this new security thing too, right? So I kind of wanted to ask about like how the products themselves are changing, not just the development lifecycle around writing code, but the actual sort of experience that people have with the services you build.
So I think we're a pretty hyper-focused company on sort of software developers, software companies, et cetera. The only thing that I think has truly changed for us is we're seeing the market expand. And it's not just like there's more developers in the world, there's more non-developers trying to do developer things. And what that looks like is you're like, oh, they can't figure out how to do the thing. And you got to make a choice, like, do you help them or do you say that's not my customer? We're probably somewhere in the middle, to be fair. But in combination with the technology, which is unfortunately quite expensive still, you can also simplify a lot of problems, like simplify software and simplify products. And so we're investing in that. And I think beyond that, everybody is certainly like, what can we do now that we couldn't do before? Or more importantly, what do we think we might be able to do some months or some years from now that we should start investing into now so we can do it? And for us, that's primarily like, can we go beyond just like diagnosing a problem? Can we get it closer to like an actual fix? I will tell you today, we cannot automatically fix bugs to any degree that we would find acceptable, but we think there are some that are probably doable today, and it will probably improve in capabilities in time. Otherwise, I think, yeah, you can say, like, if you talk to a lot of senior folks at our company, you can say the day-to-day's changed, but if you actually honestly talk to us, like people writing a lot of code using agents very heavily, you'll be like, well, we probably get a little bit more done, but some days it's really taxing, and some days we feel like we didn't get as much done. And so I think net, it's still a little bit wobbly on like how sort of the workplace, I guess, itself has changed.
Thoughts? Agree? Disagree? What do you think?
I mean, I was going to take your question in a different direction, which is like, how has our product changed for our customers? And the biggest change we see is that onboarding happens in somebody else's product. So when I think about the demo that was on stage earlier, there's a coding agent up that ended up using Cloudflare. Most products you've built in your past, you probably assume that onboarding all happens in a dashboard, and that's where the less experienced customer starts. And so it's kind of changed all of our priorities in terms of, you might have assumed 2 years ago that there's no way that somebody who's not an engineer is using the Cloudflare CLI, and that is completely flipped on its head and forced us to really think about CLI output for agents and things like that.
I'll say one other thing about, how the product has changed is I am really thinking about where an agent, sandbox, file system, like when a problem needs a computer and when a problem does not need a computer. And I, in fact, think that not every problem needs a computer, and this turn-based, tools-enabled response or chat style interface is actually highly compelling for a lot of use cases. And the latency built into the agentic system is a real detriment to some use cases that don't require the complexity. And so what I think product people are going to have to think about is what is the right AI tool for the job? And even though we now have these more powerful tools, I can give any agent a computer, that computer can have a file system, it can do a bunch of stuff, that might not necessarily be the right form factor to solve a user's problem in the moment. And so I think teams that are building products are going to have to be really thoughtful about what is an agent problem and what is not an agent problem. And just because agents are exciting right now does not mean you throw them at every problem that you have in your product.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about what David was saying around all these new signups, this growth from people that might not be your traditional customer or historically your customer. And you said you're kind of somewhere in between thinking about this. Cloudflare has had a lot of growth, and you've built a lot of agent products recently for allowing people to deploy in this way. How are you thinking about this in terms of these businesses that are growing and what you're seeing? Business leaders reasoning about it and where you take these companies?
Yeah, we always kind of looked at, I'll give you the analogy in our domain. WordPress was always a thing. People run WordPress sites, they install plugins. Those plugins might have errors. Never our customer. Not in a million years we would be like, absolutely not, we will not help you kind of thing. It just isn't the domain, because what are you going to do? You're like, oh, well, my plugin has bugs, and then what? There's nothing for you to do. You're not actually building the software. People are now building the software, even if they're not capable. And there's a question of well, who of those people are actually going to become more capable and actually continue to invest? And there are a lot more people, and we are not a business that generally sees these market dynamics play out as much in kind of this thing. There's a lot of, imagine you go to Lovable. What do you need for Lovable? Who's using Lovable? Insane growth in some of these spaces. Usually not us, but we are also seeing the downstream effects of that now. And it's not just free accounts, it's also paid accounts. And when you look at that, you're like, well, and this is significant. It's of a scale that we're okay, that actually matters. And you're like, well, what would you change that isn't compromising on what your core mission is? Which for some of us is a really big deal because we have late stage companies. We're not going to pivot. It's not a zero sum game for us. But in our kind of thing is well, yes, we always want to help people that are building software, so that matters a lot. And then what can we do now that was already probably a good idea, but maybe it's higher priority now. Maybe not, to be fair. But onboarding, whether that's through terminals or whatever, it's actually it's a bigger deal now. But also, especially for some of us have awfully complicated products, you can do it differently, and so you can reimagine some of these things, and that's cool. But that's almost unrelated. That's just you can build an interesting new experience in the same space as what you were doing before, kind of thing. And so I think there's that, and then there's the flip side of it, which is well, are there other opportunities just to generally make things more accessible in the industry? Which I think jury's out on that, because a lot of things have continued to get hard over the years, and maybe this bounces it back a little bit, but we're honestly still in the very early stages of this. But it is very present for us because, the numbers for most businesses are pretty clear what's happening now. So
I really like the split you had there of, it pushes you to do the things that are basic that you already felt like you probably should have been doing, but you have this larger cohort of people who are kind of pushing you in that direction. And then there's this other side of it, which kind of we feel the challenge when it comes to something like everybody's building a managed agent product right now. And if you're Cloudflare, we serve developers all over the world. managed agents are kind of this hybrid. They're something that, somebody who's kind of dipping their toes into being a developer would use. What is our role with that? I think we're honestly grappling with that every day. There's so much low-hanging fruit, though, for almost all of our products, ours included, that I think there's just so much work to do just to make them accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah, I would say, taking a different angle of this, there's a couple things that you can be sure of in this moment. Your user is changing. And so whether your user is changing because a broader swath of your user base is becoming less technical because AI is enabling that, or your users are no longer human because who's actually accessing your product is an agent. I think the user base for a lot of us is changing, and we have to be really thinking about what is the right user experience for this shift of users, presuming we want to acquire them. The thing that is not changing is your customer is someone with a credit card or a procurement team with a PO. And so at the end of the day, I really think the commercialization of products is something that you really have to stick on the fundamentals with. Who is my ICP? Who is my buyer? Do they have budget for this? Will they ultimately see the exchange of value so that I can make money and that's margin accretive? Those things still really matter. And so you can acquire all the users in the world, and if you don't have the fundamentals around commercialization, at the end of the day, when the VC money runs out, it doesn't matter. And so one of the things that my hypothesis is, we have all this intelligence, we have all this code that's going to be slopped into the world, and I actually don't think that there are that many commercializable ideas. And so you really have to think about that piece of it, not just what can I build, who am I building it for, but who's going to pay the bill at the end of the day.
Earlier tonight, we talked about this new auth.md spec, allowing agents to go sign up and register for services. What do you think about agents being your customer, them being the ones that you're commercializing for?
I'm very anti let agents sign up for services, if anybody doesn't know.
I knew this about David,
I'm very anti give agents a credit card and an email address. They're already a big problem for me. So I don't know. We'll see. I personally believe we're early, and it might be a thing that's necessary, which I think is a fair bet to make. We don't see it particularly in our space. We're also allergic to fraud and abuse, so we're pretty cautious around that.
Some people call that growth.
Yeah, but commercialization, let's not forget that point.
That's true.
But I do think at the very least, I'd agree that the customers are shifting a little bit. And even if you don't take that to the extreme where agents are running amok everywhere, I don't use Sentry's interface that much anymore. I use an agent through our MCP server or something else to interact with our product quite regularly and more efficiently than I did in the past. And that's a big deal. And so whatever that turns into, all these mechanisms, I think it's there's already present value in that. And this is not new. This is a year old even for me, where I was using this regularly. And so I think it's already it's clear that the way products are being interacted with has definitely changed. And I think it's how far does that go?
See, we're the opposite. I need emails from my agents. I would happily issue them a Claude Code gift card all day, all night.
Claude bucks.
I'm typing GOG auth on the hour. So I would happily delegate purchases, signups, some sort of budget to agents, because it is just the friction in my day is walking to my wallet and picking out the business card, or doing Google Pay and doing two-factor authentication. I'd rather just do the two-factor authentication. And so I 100% believe we're moving here. I actually think we might get here faster with consumer products. And as the lady on stage, I will say there's an underappreciated market for agentic commerce that is targeted at the buyers in a household. And so I know a lot of women that have their Instacarts on agents purchase, their Amazons on agents purchasing, because it is administrative overhead that can be reduced, is low risk and high value. So I think we'll get there, but he won't yet.
I mean, this is how protocols go, right? At Cloudflare, we've seen, the web go from HTTP2 to HTTP3. We follow all these different protocols, and it takes a long time. It takes an early adopter to that point, some small group of people who, this is a burning need for them, and maybe the rest of the world, the Cramers of the world, they're going to be late to the party, but.
I'm going to a different party.
No clankers allowed. Is that the... but you're still going to access it through your agent. I think this is something kind of interesting. Like, it was Brian Chesky from Airbnb was recently interviewed, where folks were challenging him around whether Airbnb, you could just chat with it to book a room. And he said, oh, never. People are never going to want to do that. They're never going to want to just chat. And the replies were a bunch of people being like, well, of course I would want to do that. That's crazy. I would just love to just chat. So you're chatting with, Sentry, all this work you've put into the dashboard over many years, chopped off, headless, kind of like the Salesforce example. Where do you think the UI layer goes around these products as we have agents? Maybe you're not letting agents sign up, but are agents the primary consumer interface to services?
It depends on what you mean by that. I'd say no. I think we still are. At least very much we are today, and I don't think that changes. At least not with the generation of technology we have. Maybe something happens, but I also think different people are different, and different people have different needs. I'm a very advanced user of the thing. I'm well aware of what I'm trying to get out of the system and how I can best get out of it. My wife will happily scroll the most inefficient way to buy stuff all day long. I promise you. No, she'll be like, "Why do I need an agent? I can just go all the websites." And I think just more people will adopt things, but I don't even know if it's like a late versus early stage thing. Like I'll take the Airbnb. I'm like, well, I kind of want to browse, but I want search to be more semantic or natural language, right? And so I think it's just going to depend. But I do think we will find more ways to solve more problems through just systems that are easier to connect. I actually think that's the core thing. It's not about chat or anything else. It's like, oh, I can actually do a thing that was like obnoxiously difficult from a technology point of view before, because it no longer has to be precise to kind of get the task done.
I think don't sleep on chat, I believe. And I did a podcast with my friend Hillary recently, and she said, you know what the most efficient API is right now? It's the Yappers API. It is just yap at an LLM, and you will get out the other side what you want. And I think humans have been trained to yap. It is a very high bandwidth communication mechanism, and the fact that we can now yap with sand, put it on Twitter, I just think is very fascinating, very natural interface to getting things done. And so I wouldn't sleep on natural language interfaces being a highly efficient, human-tuned UX for a very, very long time. I will also say people love a button. And so I do think we're gonna see these very interesting hybrid experiences for a long time. We'll see generative UI. We'll see lots of headless stuff because no one wants to look at anything that's happening. And so I actually think like designers have a really fun moment right now. Your surfaces are expanding, your products are expanding. And so I think we're going to have an abundance of user experience layers. I just still think chat is gonna be part of it.
It really is abundance. I asked this question at the first MCP night. Who's a designer in the room? Can you raise your hand? There aren't that many people who are designers who are raising their hand. And I think that's a huge problem right now. There aren't enough designers thinking about these types of challenges of how do you present to which types of customers the right types of interfaces? Where should you send somebody when they're trying your product for the first time? Because there's so many more options than there used to be. And I think it's a big hole right now.
Yeah, I mean, language interfaces need to be designed as well, just like visual interfaces.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, we just have a few minutes left. Lightning round question for you all. What do you think, if we're sitting here a year from now, which is crazy, what do you think agents will be doing then, routinely, that still feels pretty weird to us today? David probably thinks nothing will be that different. I don't know.
I mean, for software, I think it would be very normal for people to have applications that improve themselves. That you wake up in the morning and the agent merged its own changes, found its own bugs, figured out, looked at some traces, used Sentry, right? And that's just a normal practice, and we expect it out of how everybody builds things.
I guess I would extend that and make it a little bit more specific, which is I think that will extend to significant product changes. And so I think right now folks are doing that on the back-end bugs, performance, all that kind of stuff. I think you will see some leading edge teams let go of the wheel and say, sure, ship a product change. If an experiment indicates something, like let's iterate and you go ahead and ship the next iteration. And so I think we'll see product surface areas evolve without so much like product hold over it, not just the back end of the engineering side.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sure a little bit will change, but I don't think agents will be merging code yet, but they'll prepare it. I actually think most likely what will happen is we'll see more interfaces become sort of connected to models. So we see this in code all the time, and we see it a little bit with visual, but not great yet. I think we'll see more of these use cases that we might have in personal lives and stuff, but are not the thing we live 24/7. Like, I don't know, like interior design, or just pick something that happens in your life that you don't feel like you can contribute to right now, and you'll be able to contribute to it. And it just seems like the natural evolution. Which is cool, honestly. Like that's like a super valuable thing for everybody in the world. So,
I want to add one. I chimed off yours, but it's not the one I was going to say. Which is, I think the thing we will look back in a year and say, "Wow, we were all losing our minds." Is like our laptops will be closed, and that we are not going to be all walking around with these like open laptops and like. Whose laptop is sitting open on their kitchen counter right now, plugged in, running? So, yeah, I saw a raised hand. Like, I know there's one at my house. And so I think we'll like look back a year from now and be like, remember that year when we all walked around with our laptop open? Like, wasn't that cute? And I think like we're gonna find a way to shut the laptop and still get what we wanna get. So if you could solve that problem, that would be great.
Working on it.
Thank you so much for being here tonight with us at MCP Night. Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot.